Arrivé! You could never unlock my secret. Oh no! Suddenly, don't leave me! Let's begin. Indeed.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Honey Badger Radio. My name is Brian, and this is the Fireside Chat. And today we are continuing our series where we're talking to people and about their experiences, either directly or indirectly, with the military justice system with regards to false allegations and their consequences. And today I'm joined by Holly. Welcome to the show, Holly. Yeah, it's good to have you. You came highly recommended by Arvis and others who have been on the show, and apparently you have a story. It's not about you. It's about your son, right? So first, tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and I see your son's. Is that his picture right there next to you? Okay.
30 years. I retired in 2006. While I was a police officer, I was a patrolman on the streets, working out of a police car and handling calls. That was my job. I'm also the oldest daughter of 4 daughters, and I have 2 daughters of my own. So women's issues have always been very important to me. I've been an advocate for them, and I have been especially sensitive to the issues of my female and my children victims when I was on the streets of Toledo. I was extremely sensitive to their needs if they were a victim of crime. So it really took me by surprise to have to suddenly switch tacks completely in 2013 when my son was falsely accused and wrongly convicted of a sexual assault in the military, one of which the evidence clearly shows he's innocent. And he's been sentenced to 30 years in prison, Fort Leavenworth, Kansas.
Wow. So did you deal with these kinds of cases? Well, you know what? Tell us a little bit about what happened with your son.
Okay, well, he had been in the Air Force for over 10 years. He had deployed 6 times. He was a decorated combat veteran. He had also achieved his associate's and his bachelor's degree with honors in criminal justice. He attended the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center in Georgia and became a federal agent and became an OSI special agent with the Air Force. So for your listeners, if they don't know, OSI is the detectives of the Air Force. CID is for the Army and CIS is for the Navy. So just so that's what his job was. It requires a great deal of vetting. And they went to hundreds of people to make sure that he was crime-free, before they gave him that position. In 2013, in the spring of 2013, his command came to him and asked him to stop deploying so often. They said they wanted him to concentrate on criminal work stateside. Now, he had not really done any criminal work stateside. He had excelled in counterintelligence work overseas, but he went to work on that, always trying to do his best job, and soon uncovered 9 drug dealers, 9 airmen dealing drugs on the base at Fort Herbert Field, Florida, airmen dealing drugs to other airmen. He charged and arrested those. And then very shortly after that, command shipped him back to Africa, deployed him back to Africa. While he was in Africa, he started conversing with a young lady he met online through Craigslist. And they're talking back and forth and sharing intimate details of what they're interested in. And they want to meet as soon as he's back in the States. And she says, so you really want to see what I look like? And at that
So
point,
she was in the States. He was in Africa deployed.
he was,
And I assume at the time he's single and, available. Yeah. Okay.
so
So
he,
she said she wants to meet, or he wants to meet up so he can see what she looks like.
yes. And she
Okay.
said, so you want to know if I'm attractive or not? And he said, well, of course. And so she immediately sent him a nude photo of herself. They've only been talking maybe 15 minutes. Okay.
Whoa.
So this was June when he was deployed. He comes back in August, on the 9th of August. By the 10th, they've already met and hooked up. And she became angry with him because my mother was dying at that point, and she died on the 11th of August. And she was angry with him for having to go back for my mother's funeral. He said that should have been a hint to him that there was something wrong. She said, I have given.
Well, I think the nude photo 15 minutes after, I think that's a bit of a flag too. But I understand why so many men just kind of let that slide. Like, well, I guess I'm that charismatic, So, but go on.
Came home for the funeral. She was angry that he wasn't taking their relationship serious. Been talking online now for 3 weeks. So she comes home for the funeral on the 20th of August. He returns to Florida and back to work. They continue to date and sleep together for the next 3 or 4 weeks. And on the 4th of September, he breaks off his relationship with her. He said that she was acting really strange. She was sitting outside of his house at night watching his place. He just thought that this was way too much. So he ends the relationship, and she's hysterical. And he tells her, I don't want you to have to drive if you're that upset. You can spend the night if you want. I'm going to bed. Feel free to crash on the couch here. He goes up to bed, gets into bed, and she comes up later, gets completely naked, gets into bed with him, puts her shoulder underneath his armpit and lays her head on his chest and attempts to initiate sex. But he's like, no, this relationship is over. Now, in all honesty, he's got a girl that he's more interested in that he had just spent the evening with a few nights before. So that's, a girl that he really, really deeply cares about. So this young lady, we figure, was trying to get DNA at this point, but he's having it because it's over. So eventually she decides she wants to go home, and he walks her to the door, makes sure she gets to her car. She left his place that night and went to a civilian hospital. She asked to have a rape kit done. She asked them, what will you do if I have a rape kit done here? They said that they would call civilian law enforcement and they would arrest him today. She decides not to have the rape kit done. She leaves the civilian hospital and she goes to a military hospital, in which case she has the entire same test done and she can make her report either restricted or unrestricted. Restricted means she's collected all the evidence, but she doesn't want to go forth with the case. Unrestricted means they're going to start investigating. So she makes it restricted. But later on that day, when she didn't show up for work and she was in trouble with her command for not showing up for work, she decides to make it unrestricted. I was raped. That's the reason I didn't come to work.
So she was she also in the military then?
She had joined the military 6 months before. She was studying to be an air traffic controller. She had joined the military hiding a felony conviction that she had had prior to joining the military. At that time, the Air Force was taking absolutely nobody with any criminal history at all. Air traffic controllers, civilian world and military world, cannot have a criminal history at all to be in that job. She was hiding that, and she was about to undergo a special security clearance as she finished the end of her training for air traffic controller, and it was going to be discovered that she had that. So by making this claim, she protects herself, because several women in the military, they have been in trouble on their own, trouble that they got into. If they say that somebody raped them or they were sexually assaulted, all their trouble goes away and it all heaps onto the guy. That could have been the reason she was doing this. It could be just jealousy that he was seeing other people. I don't know her true motivation, her motives. But she does have a felony conviction, and here's her booking photo. so,
Ah.
so and the Air Force hid this information from us. Our defense attorneys asked for criminal background checks on everybody involved in the case, and they purposely hid this from us if they found it. They stated later, one day before his post-trial clemency request went in, which was in 2015, that that it was available to us. It was not. We only found out about this felony conviction because I hired two guys from Toledo who were police officers and now run their own little detective agency, and they found it. That would have made a great deal of difference during the trial. She lied to get into the Air Force. She lied to stay in the Air Force.
Wow. So
now,
go on.
Okay, so
yeah,
the same nurse did the whole test, and she found nothing. Okay, she found they found no signs that any sex at all occurred. She claimed an extremely violent rape. Okay, so I'm going to just tell you what she said. It's kind of horrifying. As his mother and as a police officer, I'm going to say that nobody goes through this kind of assault without a mark on them. Okay, she stated that he held her up by her neck off her feet until eyes were bugging out. But the nurse says no marks to her neck. She says that he punched her in the mouth until she could taste blood. The nurse did swabs of her mouth, no blood found. She stated he threw her on the ground and they wrestled around, no tears to her clothing. She stated that she had bruises on her thighs and her legs from a previous incident, and from this incident, no bruises found. And they brought in Special Agent Andrea Brandenbergen, who was the lead agent at that time in his unit. Now, of course, they're not going to let his unit investigate him. So they bring in people from Quantico. But in the meantime, the very first interview, this agent Brandenberger came in. I think she was a major at the time. She's since been killed in Afghanistan. But she asked her to push her uniform back, and she also couldn't see any bruises. Okay, this is all in the testimony of court, right in the testimony of court. She states that she was vaginally raped and orally raped. No semen found, no signs of any trauma whatsoever. They brought in a Woods camera, and the nurse explains that is so that you can see the secretions and that kind of thing, with the room darkened. So they went over her whole body.
Oh, yeah, sure. Okay.
Light to look for any kind of trauma at all, found nothing. Then the agents that came from Quantico, Virginia, asked for a special subdermal camera to be sent because she claimed that he bit her on her shoulder so hard that she was screaming in pain. They looked under the layers of her skin to see no trauma was found, but they knew the camera was working because they could see the different layers of her tattoo. Okay, so she has absolutely no signs that this occurred. And then they took his phone and they went back through his phone on all the 52 days of communications between the two of them. Obviously, you know what they found. They find these photos, and they found very explicit requests for what she wants him to do to her. And next thing we know, the phone is destroyed while it's in the hands of the prosecution. To me, that was the biggest red flag as a police officer.
So what did they say? Wait, you said that this is your son's phone?
My son.
Which they were taking as evidence and going through. Yeah. And it just happened that it was destroyed. Like they said, oh, the phone, it's destroyed.
It's his BlackBerry phone. They took it.
It was a government issue phone?
Okay. He was in Africa, but also they took all his phones. They took his personal phone, the BlackBerry phone. So the BlackBerry phone has all the communications for this 55 days. He was in Africa and she was here. And then they put it, Special Agent Paradis from Quantico, he puts it into evidence. Next thing, the agent Vandenbergen finds it laying on her desk. And she's going, why is this phone on my desk? Where does it belong? And they said, that's Condon's phone. She goes, why is it just laying out here? That's a broken chain of evidence. She turns it on and it works. She puts it in a Faraday bag, which is to keep it from being remotely accessed. She puts it in that and back into evidence. When it comes out of evidence next time, it's broken. Okay. The prosecutor.
Like physically broken, or it just doesn't turn on? Like somebody.
They can't charge it up. They cannot.
They didn't tell you how it was broken? Did you see it?
No, I didn't see it. No.
So they just told you the phone is broken. Sorry.
Broken. Right. And so they're looking at, they have to try to get into it with the electronic. Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you see and hear me?
The screen, I can't see you anymore. But you can still see me?
I can still see you, yeah. So what you're saying, are you on a computer, like a laptop or something? Yeah, it might have just gone to sleep or something, but yeah, you might just move things around and then it'll come back up. I don't know, maybe.
All right. Well,
I mean, if you can hear me, I can hear you.
Okay, that's good enough. That's good.
Yeah.
Anyway, so then, so they're going to do a chip off. Now, they had the FBI offered, NCIS offered, that wasn't good enough for them. The prosecutor made the decision to hire Global CompuSearch to do that chip off. What's ironic about this is that 3 months earlier, we hired Global CompuTech to be our forensic expert in this trial. They went in and hired the boss of our guy. From that point on, nothing positive.
So they hired, okay, so you let me just get this straight.
Yeah.
So you had hired a service called CompuTech.
Yeah.
To essentially what?
Global CompuSearch, I believe it's called.
Global CompuSearch.
Yeah.
And what do they do? What's a chip off?
They were going to do a chip off of this BlackBerry phone, and there's a chance that it'll be destroyed and those images will be gone forever. And then there's a chance that they'll be able to recover them. Guess what?
Yeah. and then the people that essentially are on the other side of this, they hired the same organization, but they hired a guy who's like higher up on the food chain.
Right, the boss of our
the boss. Right. Okay.
Right.
All right. That's it. I just wanted to know what that is. You can continue. What is a chip?
I have no idea. Some kind of thing that only techies know.
Yeah, it's like a deep dive thing. I'm sure somebody in the chat that's watching knows what a chip off is. I'm sure that we have some big brained people in there. Yeah. But anyway, okay, so what happened next? So they hired this guy. They hired the same company, but they hired the boss of the guy that you had used.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. So during the chip off, the phone is destroyed. And they said, all those messages are lost forever. Well, when I text you and you text me, my messages are on your phone. Your messages are on my phone. You know what I mean? We can recover something that way. Monica had 2 phones, okay? And she decided to give the OSI agents in this case her old phone, the one that showed 5 days of them breaking up and not the 55 days that they were communicating. She put her new phone at home, okay? And she didn't let that come out. Now, Agent Vandenberger puts right in her original notes, Monica has 2 phones, collect both phones. It's right there in the notes. And our agents from Quantico just didn't bother. Our attorneys asked for that phone, and the judge said, I don't think there's anything of value on it, and wouldn't allow them to have it. Okay, so all that evidence was gone. But I think because they knew that they had a bad victim, okay, and the Air Force, all the military is under the pressure from Congress at this point, and there's under such pressure that it is to believe the victim, to believe the victim. They should say believe the evidence, okay? They don't. It's believe the victim. So if somebody makes an accusation, you're supposed to believe her no matter what the evidence shows. Well,
or at least use that as your starting point, right?
That's what they do in the military, at least at that point. That's exactly what they were doing. They were believing the victim over the evidence. And in this case, I believe that the investigators knew that she was lying. They knew it. So in order to make this thing go forward, they had to start recruiting women to be victims. So the next woman they went to was his partner, Anna. She had been with him on the arrest of the 9. While he was in Africa, she took 2 of the cases to court martial and got convictions. She dates him sometimes, and then she also has a boyfriend in another state. So she's on again, off again. And Anna's situation, they see each other in the Red Door Saloon, which is a bar that he frequents often. She's there celebrating with her roommate, who just got a new job. They flirt back and forth all night long. And she is supposed to go somewhere else to sleep that night because they were supposed to be all able to drink at will. She makes the decision that she wants to go home and sleep in her own bed. So her roommate, Brooke, is going to be gone for the night. Her roommate, Brooke, and her fiance, Brooke's fiance, take her back to the apartment that she and Brooke share. And as soon as Brooke and Tuck leave, she begins calling my son and asking him to come over. He says, look, Anna, we've both been drinking. Let's not do this wrong. We already agreed to go out to dinner together on Sunday night. Why don't we just wait till then? But Anna knows her roommate doesn't like my son, and she knows that she has the place all to herself tonight. And so she says to him, really? He says, I mean, what would Anna, he says to her, what would Anna think tomorrow? Would she be happy about this decision? And she said, if you don't come, I'll call somebody else. So he really likes this girl. So he goes to her apartment 45 minutes later, knocks at the door. She opens the door wearing her pajamas, and they're together. Now, around 3 in the morning, he's having trouble breathing because he's allergic to her cat. So he wants to go home. And so he texts her a message, that I'm leaving. I can't breathe. I don't have my Claritin, and Wilford's making me, all congested. He goes, I'll call you tomorrow and we'll go to dinner on Sunday. She wakes up short time later and she's angry that he left. And she said, way to make a girl feel. Well, and the prosecution makes it she was passed out drunk is the reason he's done.
Oh, but he was drunk too, right? They had both.
Right. He was drinking, she was drinking. Why
okay.
Crime at the guy? How come the girl can't consent after one drink? And that's what the standard was at that time. If a woman had one drink, she could not consent to sex.
It still is the standard,
but
and it's unique to women too.
Well,
generally men can handle their liquor a little bit better, but that shouldn't. No, that's a biological reality. That's got nothing to do with the law, right?
As a feminist, all right. As a feminist, I'm kind of offended that you say I can't consent to sex with my own body after one drink. This is equivalent to me as a police officer. If I stop a woman who's drunk driving and she suddenly points to her boyfriend next to her in the passenger seat and says, it's his fault. It's ridiculous. If you can drive with one drink, then you certainly can consent to romantic liaison after one drink. It's ridiculous. So anyways, she's angry with him and she wants him to bring her the Plan B pill. And he says he'll be happy to do that later in the day. But she says, not right now, because guess what she did? She called somebody else. So there's another guy there.
Like another man?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Man there at this time. Now, she did that because she wanted to make my son jealous. She used this guy repeatedly to make my son jealous. But that's what she did. She did call somebody else.
Okay. And so this woman, Anna, right?
She is an OSI special agent herself.
She is a what? OSI special agent herself? Okay.
Right.
So going back to the case, so you're saying that the military courts wanted to get more witnesses to sort of strengthen the case against your son. So they went to Anna and they tried to take her experience, that scenario, and turn it into something more nefarious because it strengthens the case that his original fling was already, you know, the girl with the tattoos that claimed that he violently raped her. So they're basically just building a case, and they're using like anything that sounds like it could pass as a means to deliver this, right? This is why we're hearing this other story.
That's right.
Okay.
So they start pressuring Anna. They found out about some minor misconduct on Anna's part. And Anna is given immunity to testify against my son on a sexual assault. So this consensual relationship they had on the 30th of August becomes now a rape, okay, under the pressure. And
Yeah.
because she's promised immunity on her own minor misconduct.
So the Anna gets an offer.
Right.
And they're like, if you accuse him of rape,
right,
we're gonna what, like dismiss her that other thing she did. It's like a tit for tat, a little.
If you cooperate with us, then we will.
Quid pro quo.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Now Anna, she's not a dumb girl, and she knew that a lot of the pressure, a lot of the way they were treating her was wrong, because she had just finished the advanced course in sexual assault investigation herself. That was her job in this unit, she was sent for this special training because that was going to be her job. Okay. And so she knows that the way that they're treating her is not right. And so later on in the case, and they held my son in custody 344 days before trial, trying to build a case. Okay, that's a violation of speedy trial. You only have 120 days to hold somebody in custody before you bring them to trial. So Anna wrote a 3-page letter to the convening authority. The convening authority is the guy who's the charge of the base. He's the one that decides if cases go forward or don't go forward. And he's running the base. And it looks bad for him. You know, if he's got 9 drug dealers, it looks bad for him if he lets an OSI agent go because of sexual assault. It looks bad for him, okay? And he's up for general. So Anna wrote a 3-page letter. I have taken out some of the parts that she states. Can I read to you what she says about this?
Sure. Yeah.
All right. It's a 3-page letter, so I tried to pare it down to just so that you can get the point. On the 3rd of October, 2013, you signed a letter granting me testimonial immunity in exchange for my cooperation with this investigation and testimony at trial. Since that time, I have been very unhappy with the way this investigation has been conducted and no longer wish to testify. From the beginning, this was never an investigation that I wanted to be a part of. First, I had a personal relationship with Tech Sergeant Condon, and I felt my participation would be a betrayal to him. Special Agent Paradis took my phone from my hand, placed it on the desktop, and began snapping photos of it. I told him multiple times that this made me uncomfortable. His response was to criticize my reluctance by implying, as an agent, I should know better, that forfeiting my phone's content should be expected. I decided to let them take the photos they needed because it would help, despite Special Agent Paradis' continued offenses. She was presented with a search and seizure warrant for her phone. It was made adamantly clear to me on several occasions that I was obligated to turn in my phone as part of my immunity agreement, that the immunity required my full participation. It was implied that if I did not consent to release my phone, my immunity agreement would be void. I later learned the search and seizure authorization provided for my phone was not legal. I felt the immunity agreement was used as a tool to manipulate me into testifying and has been held over my head at every step. I do not believe these tactics are ethical, nor do they uphold the values and integrity within our legal system. I have tried to tolerate feeling mistreated because I felt I was doing the right thing. I am not so sure anymore. The government's actions have left much more significant impact on my life than anything between Tech Sergeant Condon and I. This is something I want to put behind me, not just because I feel so mistreated by the government, but because Tech Sergeant Condon is someone I care about. Okay, so she's saying they're saying she was raped, but yet the government has left much more of a significant impact on her life than anything between my son and her.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Although I think your son was probably more impacted by this than she was. So, I mean, it's great that she points out that this has like been a problem for me, but I think that it's really been a problem for him. So, or at least we haven't gotten to that point yet. But so what happened next? So we have they're using this these, I guess, incidents to like build a case.
Yeah.
And even some of the people involved, or at least this woman, Anna, is not pleased with the way that this is being used, but
Right.
they're going forward with it anyway.
Correct.
So what happened next?
So now we're going through September. They've taken his phone and they start going through and speaking to every single woman in his phone. Okay. So the next girl that they get to is Jenna. And he had met Jenna on plentyoffish.com, and they dated on and off for 2 years. And the last time that he was with Jenna, she saw him at the bar. She said, "Hey, I moved to a new apartment. Why don't you follow me home?" He was on his motorcycle. She was in a car. She asked him to stay. They, of course, had sex. She had 3 roommates in the house. She never screamed for help. This consensual situation became a crime when they needed it. The next morning, they got up. He took her out to breakfast. They went up to a house where she was dog sitting, fed the dogs. He came back, and by that time, it stopped raining. He took his motorcycle home. Okay, when the OSI agent went to speak to her, again, Special Agent Paradis, she told him, and I'm going to state right from the record of trial.
Okay.
Okay. He says, "Now you would agree that it's important to tell the truth when talking with law enforcement." She says yes. "And you understand that it's important to the investigation to be honest." And she says yes. "And during this, when you spoke with Agent Paradis, you were in fact truthful with him." She said yes. "During this interview, Agent Paradis asked you about your sex life with Tech Sergeant Condon." He did. "And you said it was a pretty normal sex life." Yes. "And you said he never forced himself on you." I did say that, yes. "And you said that he never took advantage of you in a drunken state." And she said yes. "You told Agent Paradis that you were 100% willing every time." She says yes. So he convinces her after, I don't even know why he's still talking to her. Okay. After she said all that, why is he still talking to her? But he needs to make a bad case into a good one. So he has her write her statement. So she writes a 2-page typewritten statement. It's a bit right here.
Okay.
When you get down to the end of it, she says, "He convinced me to have sex." The man,
Uh-oh.
the man,
Uh-oh.
the man says to her, "This doesn't describe a crime." And he has her cross out and write in what would make a crime. See how it's handwritten at the bottom?
Yep, I see it. Yep.
Okay.
So the way that she wrote it was not useful. So
Right.
they're like, we got to rewrite this.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, and he tells her what to say to make it a crime. Okay.
Yeah.
Not only this is continuing bad behavior on the Air Force's part. They consider this continuing bad behavior because technically Anna happened for Monica happened, and then Jenna. So now they're going to use this to put him in pretrial confinement so that he can't really help with this case. Okay. So in fact, there's a police report. They had her go to the Okaloosa County Police Department, and in their police report, it says, "Agent Paradis also told me that he located another victim who was sexually battered by Condon, increasing the number of victims to 3. He said that per the UCMJ, Condon would now be classified a serial rapist
No.
and arrested as such. Agent Paradis said upon Condon's arrest, he would be transported to Charleston. He was transported to Jacksonville Naval Brig. Okay. And so, of course, as his family were concerned, and we hire our own personal attorney, a man named Roper, Eric Roper. He had been a Navy commander. He was out of the service now and doing criminal cases in Jacksonville. That's where they moved my son to, 5 hours from his home. So he can't call any lawyers he knows. And so we hired Mr. Roper. Then as soon as he came to trial, they moved him 5 hours away from that attorney. We paid $15,000 for it. Okay. Making it impossible for him to help with this case in any way. Okay. And they put him in a civilian facility named Santa Rosa County Jail for 71, 72 days. Santa Rosa County Jail has been found to starve prisoners. My son lost 40 pounds during this time. They had to put him in solitary confinement because he was in the military, and they held him there 72 days. The lieutenant colonel in charge of the legal office told the attorneys, Santa Rosa County Jail makes it very difficult for attorneys to have contact with their prisoners, and so let me know if there's a problem with that. Okay. Think about that. Okay, you're trying to come up and plan for trial, and they have moved you 5 hours away from your attorney to a civilian facility that she knows makes it difficult for him to have communication with his lawyers.
Yeah. So
Okay.
this further makes it harder for him to fight
Right.
For his innocence. It makes it harder for his lawyers to fight.
Mm-hmm.
Did they bring any more women out of the out of his black book, or
No, they tried. Okay.
they did? Okay.
I just want to say that Jenna had been telling her friends that she was in love with my son, that she wanted to marry him. And she was never a victim, which they could have easily checked her phone.
Mm-hmm.
Jenna sat on the stand during the Article 32, which is like the grand jury, and cried and said, "You don't understand how much in love with him I was." Okay. Now, I don't know about all the other women out there, but I would not be in love with my rapist. Okay, I would not be in love.
Well, of course not. Of course not. But again, like.
But again, she's using her. The Air Force. I want to say this: the Air Force used these women. They used Anna and they used Jenna to build a case that was a bad case to begin with. They did not care about their feelings. They did not care about the trauma that they put them through. They did not care that they destroyed Anna's career in the Air Force. And Jenna, everything that Jenna charged, he was found not guilty. But they put her through the pain of sitting on the stand and being fired at questions and being embarrassed when it showed in her phone clearly how many times she's asking him to come over, what she's offering if he does come over, that she said the day after this was a fun day anyway. She told her friend she had made bad decisions the night before. Her friend said, "Rob decisions." She said, "Yes, but it was a fun night anyway." This is the reason my son's put into pretrial confinement, for this fun night anyway. So you see what you got here. So yeah. I mean, this is now. So did they try to bring in other women? They brought in a woman from Bowling Green, Ohio. She did not know his name. She knew his name was Robert, but she called him Robert Auger. My son's last name is tattooed on his chest. Okay. She didn't know whether he had tattoos or not. The judge didn't allow her to be a victim. He didn't allow it. They went to his best friend, whose name is, she goes by her middle name, which is Joe. The Air Force came there. She didn't want to speak with them. They called and said, "We want to talk to you about your friend Robert." So I have her letter here. They wouldn't tell her about what, and they wouldn't tell her what Robert. She said she had met him in Destin, Florida through mutual friends, and they soon became fast friends, hung out almost daily with a group of their mutual friends. Rob shared many details with me about his life and his thoughts. We enjoyed talking about many things. He would tell us about the girls he was seeing and introduce us to them. He is what I would describe as a calm person, even a peacemaker. I only saw someone try to pick a fight with him once in a bar, which is rare in a tourist town, she said, and he calmly diffused the situation. The incident ended in a handshake. She never saw him be inappropriate with anyone. Now, this is also a very long letter, but I'm going to cut to just some of these little things. She found from the family that he was going to be out of pocket for a while, and she assumed it was work-related. So she was confused when a woman from the Air Force called to schedule a time to talk about her friend Robert. She seemed put off that I asked her to confirm the person she was referencing. Since I have no affiliation with the Air Force, and she was incredibly unclear as to why she wanted to speak with me, she declined the meeting. They reached out again and asked her husband, who is with CID, okay, in the Army. My son and he had the same job, but in different branches of the service, and asked the lead investigator to clarify why they wanted to speak to him. This woman told him that Rob had my phone number on his call list and was quite simply concerning this matter, and it was wise to speak with them so as to avoid being subpoenaed and risk facing ill treatment in court. 2 female investigators came to my home while I was home alone, as her husband had deployed. They asked strange and frivolous questions about Rob's girlfriend, Anna. Later in the interview, things took a drastic turn. One investigator said, "What if I told you that we have evidence that you're having an affair with Rob? What would your husband think about that?" She says, "I remember being so blindsided and shocked by this question. I felt my body lean across the table. I looked her in the eye and said, I would tell you that you don't have this evidence because I am not having an affair with Rob, and I have never Skyped with him." She got up to get her computer to prove this, and she said, "We have Skype conversations between you and him and a girl named Joe, and you go by Joe, don't you?" And she said, "Yes, I go by the name Joe, but I have never Skyped with Rob, ever." She said, "I found it so odd that they would threaten me with false evidence and insult me in my own home with an accusation of an affair while my husband was deployed, while also refusing to explain why I would be a victim and what charges Rob was actually charged with." She felt very disrespected by the investigators and also found their weak attempt to fish for some type of wrongdoing on my part and Rob's part to be despicable. She said, "I was sad to see the Air Force investigators treat a military spouse or any woman as a pawn in their investigation. I found the treatment of the Air Force toward me to be unprofessional, dishonest, and manipulative. I have also have no doubt that they treated other women just as poorly and as ineptly." Okay, that's his best friend. Then they went to a woman who shares the same name and spelling with my daughter. They saw on my son's phone him having a chat, or text messages back and forth with his sister about what bars, she was in college at the time, what bars they could go to when he came home and people she wanted him to meet. Okay. They went to Afghanistan to try to make that agent into a victim. She stated she knew who he was. She'd never date him. There was no relationship like that. They went to other women that he had been with, Megan, who was in the Air Force herself. She stated it was her sex life, get out. So they just continued to do this they went all the way back to high school. They
Right.
talked to the first girl he was ever involved with in high school. Okay. He's been in the military 10 years. Okay. And had perfect service. He'd always been rated the highest rating on every evaluation. He'd been promoted up to E6, I think, at this point. They were constantly listing him as promote before peers. And this is the attempt that they were going to. So as soon as they arrested him and put him in pretrial confinement, the convening authority of the base went to the judge and demanded that all 9 drug cases, be dismissed. Even the 2 that Anna had already got convictions on. Why? The judge argued and said they have nothing to do with each other. One's a sex crime, one's a drug crime, but he allowed it.
So the drug crime, because you told me that your son is the one who caught those people. He's the one, and so after that, and that was sort of like, I guess it was ongoing, but there was, or it was looking like it was going to be a conviction.
Right.
But while that's going on, these sexual assault cases come out.
Right.
Is it so? It's while this drug thing is going down, these sexual assault cases come, and it's like a barrage from all, it's just throwing everything at him.
Right.
So then I was just gonna say, okay, I want to ask questions around that, but maybe we should get to the end of the story. Like, where is your son now, and what's happened?
Okay. So my son, he was all right. They went all the way till May. They were supposed to start trial. They come to court, and
That's this May that just passed.
May and
2020. What year?
2014. He's
okay.
On October 10th of 13. He's brought to trial the first time, May of 14. They've gone over their 120 days. So the rule is the case is dismissed. The judge allowed the case to be dismissed, but he also allowed them to refile. They refiled their charges against him and add 4 more charges. So the government screws up and ends up in a more aggressive position against my son. They set the trial for July. In July, they do not now allow enough time for the case. And the judge has to go to Guantanamo for a case against a terrorist. Okay. So they push the whole case to September. So now my son's been in jail for 344 days. They find him guilty and they sentence him to 30 years in prison. Okay. At that point in time, a friend of ours had done a check. He had pulled up the Air Force convictions from 2010 to 2014, July of 2014. As of that time, no one had gotten a charge of 30 years for a sexual assault. No one. Okay. There was one man that actually committed a burglary in a deployed person's house and with a gun and raped that woman. He got 20 years on a pretrial agreement. Okay, so and that was an actual crime. With this lack of evidence, okay, they give my son 30 years. Why? And why? And in the Air Force first appeal, Judge Jay Brown said, you're giving him way too much time. He said that while supposedly this was much more significant, there was reasonably mistake of fact because he had been with these women before. There was plenty of mitigating circumstances. There was a lot of unlawful command influence. And he said that the judge's arguments, that the trial counsel's arguments were flawed and not allowed. And the judge exasperated them by not correcting them. They at the time, they kept referring to his status as an OSI special agent. Judge Brown says he cannot be held to a higher standard or given more time because he's an OSI special agent. But like I said, nobody else had ever gotten 30 years. Since he's been in prison, he saved the life of Chelsea Manning when she tried to hang herself. He was working as a nighttime janitor.
Whoa, wait a minute. He saved Chelsea Manning?
Chelsea Manning's life.
Chelsea Manning. And she tried to hang herself.
Okay. And was working as the midnight janitor on the night shift. Everybody's locked down. He hears a guard yelling to Manning, standing outside the cell. He said,
so there's like a co-ed prison then? Or there's a women's wing and a men's wing, or?
Had changes, and she was a man when she went in. And
oh yeah, right. Okay. So, so anyway, go ahead.
Transgender. So the guard is yelling for help. My son says, "You need my help," and he said, "Yes, come on up." So when he went up, he found that she was hanging by her bootstraps. Her feet were off the ground. She had a pillowcase over her head. She'd already vomited. She'd already urinated. And he said, "Oh my God, she's dead. We have to go help." And the guard said, "I cannot go in until my backup comes." And then my son said, "Well, I can go in." So he went in and held her up, and he yelled at the guy, "Please get in here and get these off her neck." And he's trying to get the laces off around her neck. And they come in and they tell him to go back to a cell and lock down. Okay. But what would have been the harm to the United States Army from the transgender community if she had been successful, which she very well could have been by the time that the backup got there.
Yeah.
Anyone who saves a life in prison, this has been noted many times, receives time off their sentence, as a reward. Not one day. My son hasn't received 1 day off the sentence. And he has to admit his guilt. So he and his lawyer wrote admission of guilt because he wants to come home. He's been there 11 years. In July of 2022, he was scheduled to take their treatment, okay, which is basically group therapy, okay. But in 2022, when it was time for him to take the treatment, they suddenly ripped that treatment away and said, you didn't admit guilt soon enough. We're moving you back years before you can get the treatment.
Oh.
Okay. Otherwise, he'd be home. So in 2023 was the first time he could put in for parole. So he asked me to go to the federal prison system, which I did, and got their treatment, which is in book form. They send out these packets. So to cover all his bases, he had sexual offender, substance abuse, contentious relationship, domestic violence. He took all of those. He says it's like college work. You read the stuff, you fill out the paperwork, you send it back in, they give you a certificate, okay, of completion. He put the certificates of completion in his parole packet. The best packet, the people who took it at the level at the prison says the best packet they've ever seen. 5 offers of jobs, 5 places to live. Okay, a lot of guys can't even get one. They have to go to halfway houses. Big time family support. Okay, and these packets that he has been writing books since he's been in prison, and a couple are published. Okay.
Yeah, I have one here. Well, you told me about the one book, right? I'm gonna show it on the screen for people. The Invisible Casualty. Is that the one of the ones that he wrote?
Yeah.
You have it right there. Yeah, I'm displaying it for people, and I put a link in the description to the Amazon website, but you can get it. You can get it at other places, Barnes and Noble, and
99, and you can get a paperback for like $12.99. I think I saw, and that describes everything that they did during the trial to deny him his due process. He was an OSI special agent, so he is versed in somewhat in that the detectives and what that was supposed to be like.
Mm.
So this year, again, he hasn't had the treatment. He's like 35 on the list. He may not have it for next year. So this year, I hired a psychologist to talk to him by phone. This cost me over $2,000. He's diagnosed as, he says, there's some crazy sexual stuff. Mostly, he has chronic PTSD. And he says in his report, if he was not suffering from serious PTSD and drinking excessively at the time of this alleged crime, this would have never happened. I say it never happened in the first place. The evidence shows it. But the evidence...
So it sounds... Okay. So he has been diagnosed with this PTSD?
PTSD.
And what was the other thing?
He said alcoholism. He thought he was suffering from
alcoholism.
Of course, he said remission, probably in remission, because, of course, he hasn't drank in 11 years. Okay.
Right. But, okay, so is this something that he knows he had, like, maybe even before he went to prison? Or is it something that they're telling him he has? Okay. Like, they're gaslighting him into believing that he's crazy?
We in our family, we knew that he had PTSD. He came to the Outer Banks.
Because he was in Afghanistan. Is that where... Yeah.
Mostly what happened in Iraq is what...
Iraq.
Okay. They were hit by an IED. His commander, the guy in charge, had his arm nearly ripped off. My son said there was so much blood, he thought that he had been hit. He had to return fire. He had to gather these 2 trucks together. One guy, he said, walked off and called his mother. He said, under this chaos, he managed to get buddy care for the guy. He saved his arm. They got back to the base. Medics were there. The Army gave him an award, okay, for that combat. for that situation, the Army, and he's in the Air Force. The Air Force gave him an award for under his investigative work to find, he uncovered and the arrest of 72 or 78 Taliban fighters. My son was credited with that, his work, in uncovering where they were holding up, who was involved with who, and taking 78 people off the.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yes, there are people.
So okay, so then all right, so legitimate PTSD for legitimate reasons, and then,
Exactly.
but despite that, and you know, I could see people drinking or smoking or doing something to like help cope. I think that's human.
Yes.
But despite all that, the military seems to have essentially like made things way worse. Like it was he already served our country. He already did all of this, you know, his duty. And I guess the only thing, it seems to me, and again, I don't know where we're at in the story. I don't know if you're done, but it seems to me that the one thing he's guilty of is being attractive to women and indulging in that. Like, I mean, that's what, you know, like, and this is, well, I just, you know, I warn guys. Yeah, I know you. I warn guys about especially getting involved with, you know, with one night stands. It's just the political and legal climate is just way too dangerous. It's way too hot. And you know, I've talked with Arvis Owens about college campuses a bit and how bad things are there for men. And you know, it's kind of a similar thing where you have like the college has its tries to handle everything internally, but while the consequences can be really bad, like guys get expelled and you know, things like this, the military can be even worse because you can just get thrown in jail. Like they're more harsh in military courts against the accused without strong evidence than civilian courts, it seems.
Yeah. Yes. You know, I asked Andy to consider, well, we call him Andy. His name is Robert Andrew Condon. I asked him to seek out a counselor for PTSD way back before this happened. And he said, if I go to counseling, Mom, then I can't deploy. And if I'm going to be a soldier and be most effective for my country, I have to be able to deploy. So he put his own mother's advice and his own welfare aside to deploy and to do the best work he could for the country. And maybe that's crazy, but that's how gung-ho young he was, that he felt that to be a truly effective military man, he had to deploy. And so he put that off for himself, and look what happened, you know. So it's
well, the reality is we need people like that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's the reality. We need people like that. And so, but we should take care of those people. Yeah. I mean, we should certainly take care of them. So, okay. We've gone for about an hour, but I want to talk a little bit longer, if that's okay with you.
Absolutely.
Okay. So I have a couple of super chats, which are basically like messages that people send in. They send a couple bucks and they can make a comment. So I have a couple I want to read out. So Albert Nada Retro gave us, I think it says $2. I can barely read it. And says, Holly, I'm sorry about what happened. Thanks for sharing with us. And then and this is Canadian dollars. And then he sent another $2 Canadian and says, this is related to the drug deal somehow, he suspects. And I don't know if you want to say anything to either of those comments.
Okay. All right. I put that out there just because I found it so unusual that they told him not to deploy.
It's a coinky dink.
Yeah. And as soon as he uncovers this, they're upset and they redeploy him. And that they use that opportunity to dismiss those 9 cases. I have no way of proving positively that it was about the drug cases. But, you know, whose son, whose nephew, whose grandson might have been one of those.
Yeah.
One of the,
and also who benefits
right.
from these convictions.
3 of the 9 were on this hand-picked group of young airmen called the Airmen's Council. They're handpicked by higher-ups in the Air Force as future leaders, people they consider to be future leaders of the Air Force. 3 of those guys were on that Airmen's Council. So again, somebody's son following in the tradition in the Air Force. I cannot prove it. I absolutely cannot prove it. It just seems the 30 years when, a serious one gets 20. The average, our friend went through all 169 cases when my son was found guilty, 169 cases from 2010 to July of 2014. The average time given is 3.39 years. The highest one, and that was a serious, actual, all kinds of DNA proof, all kinds of injury to the woman, husband deployed, broken window, brought a gun. He gets 20 years. Okay. I have to ask why. Why? Because he's an OSI agent with a flawless career before this happened? I have to ask why. And you have to drug cases have something to do with it.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe. Thank you, Albert. And then I got one from Richard Bier, gives us $5 and says, was the defense counsel in the 9 drug cases a military JAG officer by any chance?
Okay, repeat it.
Okay. Was the defense counsel in the 9 drug cases, so the drug case, a military JAG officer by any chance?
Anybody charged in the military gets a military lawyer. They can have a lawyer of their own as well. I do know that when we went to see my son and he was in the Santa Rosa County Jail, they were also holding 2 of the drug guys there. So they saw him, and I'm sure there was some, hey, the guy that arrested us has just been arrested, but they dismissed these cases 120 days before my son was charged with end crime. He was under investigation, but he hadn't even been charged yet. 120 days before he was charged, and they took that position. So that kind of does away with innocent until proven guilty when you dismiss those cases 120 days before the guy's even charged. So I don't know exactly who their lawyers were. It could very well be.
Okay. And I have a couple of questions as well. So first one I want to ask is, what are you going to do now? What's the plan right now? Do you guys have something? I know that I have it shared that there's a petition that is sort of a more broad thing. It's called wouldyou.care that Arvis told me about. I also the freeourwarriors.org. So but that link doesn't appear to be working. I don't know if it's maybe the wrong it says I get a Wix error message from it. I don't know if it's been taken down or what, but
Yeah.
but what are your plans? What's the next thing for you guys? What's the next step?
This is really great that you're doing this because it lets me get my son's entire story out. I don't usually get a chance to talk this much. When we go to the DAC iPad, I've spoken twice, and I'm going to read Sarah's letter at the next one, show how the women themselves were being mistreated by the military in their endeavor to try to get these convictions. We just keep fighting. We're hoping that someone will start looking into the case. If you want a conviction integrity unit, one of the ladies on who's an expert in that kind of thing says you need a tribunal to actually go through every single case and show it will. I have the proof. I'd be happy to show anybody the proof that he isn't guilty. He isn't. There's way too much stuff here wrong with this case.
Yeah.
I mean, and I've just touched on things. They did other crazy things.
Yeah.
I
Did
basically spoke about each girl and how that came to be. But when he asked me to take his car and move it off the base because he said, while it's on the base, anybody can do anything to it. They could put drugs in there. They could do anything. So we requested his sergeant, could we get his car off the base? And the sergeant took us out to this car. He went through the entire car. He said, "Do you mind?" I said, "Absolutely not. Go through." He went through the entire car. He took his military equipment out, and he escorted us off the base. They ran that guy over the coals because he did that. He didn't do anything wrong. The car's not under arrest. I take the car and I put it in an airplane hangar his friend owned for to be stored while he was gone this 344 days. And they make that obstructing justice. My son obstructing justice because he asked me to take care of his vehicle. Now, how is that obstructing?
Yeah.
Like I said, and the sergeant, who was an OSI agent himself, went through the whole car, searched it, made sure there was nothing in there that they needed. They were convinced there was a phone in there. There never was a phone in there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They stacking charges, hoping something will stick.
Exactly. Well, they got him in there now, and they might, I don't know why they would, but it looks like they're looking for ways to keep him in there. Okay, another question is, did any of after all that's happened and what are the consequences of what's happened, have any women other than the ones that you already mentioned, have they come forward to, like the first girl, right? That was like, she did this out of like bitterness or out of whatever. She was pissed off. But did she ever like come around and say, "I think I took this too far. I'm going to change my statement. I'm going to fight for him because I think this is like," isn't it just amazing that she could be that spiteful?
She was put out of the Air Force, probably because they know about the felony and they didn't want her. But she's paid as a sexual assault survivor. She makes money, like a pension. She gets paid for lying.
Yeah, I heard that they take care of women in the military when that happens. They give them money.
Lost her career because of this. She went back to Las Vegas. She's married, and she's a family counselor at this point. She is scared to death of the government. I sent my investigators to talk to her. She ran away. She said, "I'm not talking to anybody from the Air Force or the government." They said, "We're not from the Air Force or the government. We're from Condon's family." And she stopped and she talked to them. But she's afraid of the government. She's afraid that they'll come after her, and she's afraid that they'll take the money that they've been paying her all this time. So
make her pay it back, right? Yeah. Kind of a trap. It's like a devil's bargain.
Scared to death of the government. She's not scared to death of me. She's scared to death of the government.
One more thing.
Sure.
Do you think this is, so when I spoke to Arvis, and I've been doing this for 10 years.
Yes.
But I want to ask you if you think that there is not necessarily what specifically happened to your son, but the entire framework that allowed for this to happen, the way that we investigate these crimes, the way that we convict on these crimes, the standard of evidence that we use, the presumptions that we make. Do you think that there's a political aspect to this?
Absolutely. In the military, there's definitely political. Okay, I'm going to say civilians can get it wrong too. But here's the differences. When you're judged by the military, and I don't think they should be in charge of any sexual assault cases. If it happens stateside, okay, then whatever jurisdiction should handle it, that's there. Because in the military, your jury is not a jury of your peers. In civilian life, you don't know anybody on the jury and they don't know you. In the military, your jury is made up of your superiors. So think about, you work for a big company like the United States Air Force, and you are now a problem employee. The CEOs are the ones making the decision on whether you're going to be convicted or not. That's what it is. They're all higher in rank than you are. They had only 5 or maybe 6 people on my son's case. Now that's up to 12. They've changed a lot of things, but there's still that 1 drink rule is ridiculous. Civilian authorities will look at these situations and realize that there's a reason to lie. The military doesn't care. Okay, if you're a wife and you are divorcing your husband and you want sole custody of the kids, all you have to say is, "My husband sexually assaulted me." He's going away. The government's going to pay you, and you got custody. Okay, there's something wrong with that. You got a felony conviction. you're going to be put out of the service. If you lie, they might keep you because they don't want the stink, or they might throw you out and pay you. That's kind of a win-win for her, isn't it? You know, you devote 10 years of your life to the military, deploy 6 times, get your degrees with honors, are 5 truly among the best at every evaluation. You can be sacrificed like you are nothing, like you're the lowest of the low. And to the people out there who are thinking about joining the military, if you're female, it's probably okay. If you're male, you won't be believed no matter what. They won't care about the evidence. They won't care if they use you as a number to please Congress.
Yeah.
Congress needs to fix it.
Congress made this law?
They made the problem. Senator Gillibrand and a couple other women were so hard on the military, they could hold up their money, they could hold up their promotions, and they did. They held up 2 promotions in the Air Force that spring. If you don't want your promotion held up, you better make everybody guilty of, at least pursue. If the cases came in before and there wasn't good enough evidence, the commanders would say, we're not going forward with that. After Congress's pressure on them, they went forward with anything, no matter what. And they were told to get convictions. And they did. They just sacrificed people's lives to do it. They destroyed American families to do it. Our family has really missed him. My father's 91 and he just did a thing on TikTok. He wants him home before he's dead. It's been very painful. He missed his sister's wedding. He hasn't met his brother-in-law. He hasn't met his little baby niece. It's just been extremely painful for our family. And I can't believe that this happened to us.
Yeah.
Really don't want it to happen to anybody else.
Well, yeah, no, me neither. And I hope that, we like this live stream that we're doing, this is going to stay up and we're going to make shorts out of it and put those out on our TikTok and stuff and see if people see it. Hopefully, yeah, we'll raise some awareness. The only thing we can do is get people to know that this kind of stuff is going on. Yeah, it's the second time that Kirsten Gillibrand comes up. That's really interesting. Okay, so I guess I got 2 more messages that I got while you were talking. Albert Native Retro gave us another $10 Canadian. Thank you, Albert, and says, to Holly's point, my grandfather got into a scrap with a general's son during World War II, and suddenly he was on a boat to Normandy for a little thing called D-Day. Not the same, but similar. Thank you for that. Yeah, I guess if you upset people, you could end up in a situation like that, but it's also could be an opportunity. And then Zeranx gave us $2 and says, Kirsten Gillibrand comes up again. Yeah, I think there's a pattern here, and I do think it's political. I think it's, there was when I was talking to Arvis, he said something that I knew was true, but I wanted him to say it. He said that the military, or these figures like Kirsten Gillibrand, these kind of activist judges and activist Congress people, they basically say, okay, we know that there is a problem with sexual assault in, organization X, which could be military, could be colleges. Now we just need to get the convictions and the cases to match the numbers that we are told for sure exist. And it's possible that these are also tools that you can use to destroy people that you find, they're doing too well, or they could be a problem or whatever. And you just say, oh, well, he's a hit with the ladies. Let's go get some ladies and see how many of them we can get to step forward and point the finger and make an allegation. And, it's monstrous. And, there's another thing that I think people may not quite get. False allegations can be extremely traumatizing if you are innocent. If you know that you didn't do it and someone's telling you that you hurt someone, it can be very traumatizing. And I think that we don't really look at it because it's not like physical harm, and a lot of times it's happening to men, and we just have this idea that men can just take it. but like I think that it can be really harmful. And I don't know if you've talked to your son about how he feels about these allegations, but yeah, I mean,
Strong. I would be dead. Now, he's extremely strong, but he says he's angry every day because he knows he doesn't belong there.
yeah,
He has taken treatment for PTSD while he's been there, and it did help quite a bit. But no one wants to talk when he's in the room because he was an OSI agent. So even in taking treatment will be difficult because none of the other inmates want to talk when he's there about their crimes. Does that make sense? They don't want to talk.
yeah,
So
yeah.
sending him home and letting me hire treatment is better for everybody. That's what I say. Better for everybody. He's been writing books. He plays sports there. He tries to help the other guys with their problems. A lot of them come to him. He's been assaulted one time because he was an OSI agent. Ended up in this shoe, knocked unconscious. Didn't even see it coming because he was an OSI agent. And but only once. He's only been to the shoe once because both parties went. But.
Well, the other thing too is that men who have been accused of rape are usually despised by other prisoners, like other inmates, because they see that as such a like monstrous thing, right? So if they believe that the thing that he's accused of is true, then it puts him in a worse position, especially because it seems to me that it isn't true, but the guys, the inmates don't know that. They just think, oh, this guy went in jail because he did these things. He's a terrible human being. So, I mean, that's another factor to consider is that, like, if you're falsely accused and you're in jail, you're in a lot of trouble. You got to look over your shoulder.
You're the only person that gets 30 years. That's exactly right. The presumption is something really horrible.
Exactly. 30 years, too. They're like, this guy is a monster. All right.
Now, the most hated people there are the child molesters, okay? There are a few sexual assaulters. There are a lot of war guys that committed war crimes, they say. There is a hierarchy, that's absolutely. But this book has gone around the prison, and he says all the time when somebody reads it, they come up and they say, "Oh man, I'm really sorry, you don't belong here." So.
Well, yeah, it's a good thing the book exists.
There
So
are people who have said that to him. I'm sorry, you don't belong here.
Yeah, for sure. All right, well, Holly, it's been a really good conversation. I don't know if there's any last words you wanted to say before I end the show, but.
Sign the petition, call your congressman and say how wrong this is. Guard your sons, grandsons, nephews from joining the military. I guess that's all I have to say. Pray for my.
All right. Well, thank you for telling us your story, and thank you guys for joining us on the show. I'm going to be asking you to please check out the links in the description to the book. Which is, I'm going to put it back on the screen here, The Invisible Casualty. I have the Amazon, but you can get it on Barnes & Noble and other places as well. So please check it out. And again, we are doing our, we're trying to raise funds for a meetup in Calgary. We haven't met up in like 5 years. And so it'd be nice to see each other. It's just after COVID and everything, we just couldn't get out, but looks like we're going to try this year. So please go to feedthebadger.com/events to like support us there. I got one more super chat that just came through, so I'm going to go ahead and read it. Zeranx gave us $10 and says, it's not military, but I think it's correct to bring up Scott F. Spinoza in this case. He was falsely accused by a woman he was helping, and his mom took her own life while he was in prison for 19 months. All right. Well, thank you for that, Zeranx. Yeah, very dark story. It's really not good stuff, and it really sucks that people are using this for some kind of political advantage. But anyway, thank you so much for coming on the show, Holly. Thank you guys for joining us. If you like this video, please smash like, subscribe if you're not already subscribed, hit the bell for notifications, leave us a comment. Let us know what you guys think about what we discussed on the show today. And please, please, please share this video because sharing is caring. Thank you so much for coming on today's episode of the Fireside Chat, and we'll talk to you all in the next video. Have a good night.
Men's are machines. dude. Okay? They are literal machines. They are talking point machines. They are impossible to fucking deal with, especially if you have like a couple dudes who have good memory on top of that too. Holy shit, you're fucked.